Good evening and welcome to The Lounge. My name is Sakyi-Addo, and The Lounge is broadcast from the La Palm Royal Beach Hotel, precisely the Equator Bar. You may have heard stories about people being gravely ill and then somehow finding healing through art or music therapy. Well, in 2001, Ekow Grimmond-Thomson was involved in a road accident in California, which left him partly paralyzed. He subsequently took to painting after what he says was a spiritual prompting. Not long afterwards, he found healing. His amazing story appeared in the media in Milton Keynes in the UK, where he had relocated. Although he's a software engineer, he has since been painting full-time to sustain him and his health. Some of his works are also in hospitals, including at the Cardio Thoracic Centre at the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital in Accra. Mr. Grimmond-Thomson is here with me tonight to recount his story. Also joining me is Ghana's leading psychiatrist, Dr. Akwesi. He will share his professional insights regarding Ekow's story, but more importantly, about the efficacy of art and music therapy, as well as the importance of his own work as a psychiatrist. So, Ekow, so what happened to you on that day in 2001 in California?
Well, one day I decided to go out for groceries, and on my way, I saw a young, boy, riding on the streets. It was a residential area, so I decided to stop for him to. I didn't know what he wanted to do,
right. So
I just stopped. All of a sudden, I heard boom at my back. It was a Chevy truck. I went,
blood.
Yes, blunt. I didn't know what was happening. So after about a minute or two, I came out of my car. Then I looked at the guy. I didn't know what to tell him, didn't know what to do at that moment. I said, should I call the police? My phone was with me, but I couldn't use the phone to call the police. I was just standing there, I was in a shock.
You were dumbfounded. You were shocked. You're in a state of shock.
So, after a while, after about 30 minutes, I decided to, exchange, insurance, cards. And then I left the scene.
You were able to walk?
I was able to walk.
Okay.
But when I got home, I started having severe pain, headache. Then the side, because I was holding the steering wheel. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when he hit me, the steering wheel also deformed. And
so must have been a big impact.
The Chevy truck was brand new, and the young this way, the bonnet or the hood, okay, was almost on the street. Yes, on the ground. And the airbags were
exactly.
out.
So I was going to ask you, did your airbag deploy?
No, my airbag didn't,
deploy.
Yeah, but his,
All right. So it was a big impact. So tell me, and then, so you were describing your condition after you got home.
Yes, and I decided to report to a doctor. He was working for our company. When I got there, he said, did you drive your car? It's a family van, very strong one, Ford Aerostar. Do you drive this car to this hospital? I said, yes. He said, you know what, I may have to conduct some few tests. I said, what kind of tests would you want to do? He said, I may have to insert my finger at your lower back. I said, no way. I'm not going to allow that. Then he said, listen, Grimmond, I may have to do this. So I allowed him. Then immediately he said, Grimmond, I may have to call the ambulance. I got a bit scared, but I wasn't scared because I knew he was doing his job. They brought in the ambulance. They took me to Queen of the Valley Citrus Hospital in West Covina, California. The doctor came in. They detained me for about 6 hours. He came in and he gave me shots, jab, to inject me. I fell asleep for about 2 hours. I woke up. Then he came again. The doctor came again with a nurse with tablets. And I realized they were Tylenol tablets. He gave it to me and he asked me if I would want to sleep, at the hospital or take some rest. And I said, no, I would want to go home. He detained me for about an hour, an extra hour. Then he said, okay, whom could I call, to come for me? And I said, I have a friend, who lives around my area. So,
can we fast forward to the point where you found that you had serious injuries, and what was the nature of that injury?
They pushed me through, series of tests. First, X-ray, because I reported that I was having, funny tingling at my back, within the spine, and it kept, climbing up, and the numbness and tingling, pins and needles, it was funny.
So you felt numb.
Yes.
On your left side.
Left side.
Was it both your hands and your legs?
Yes, this side. The body was divided into two.
Okay.
This side and severe headache.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you walk all right though?
I could walk.
Could you use your hand all right?
I was walking, not straight,
right.
This way.
Yeah.
I was trying to control the pain, to be able to walk.
Okay.
Yeah. We did series of tests. I went through a whole chain of.
Okay. So over how many months or weeks or years?
About 1.5 years to 2 years.
1.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
They gave me medications, and later on, they said they were going to send me through surgery. They opened, First of all, he said he was going to inject my spine, and he said epidural. I said, what do you mean by epidural?
So did you have surgery?
I refused. He told me, I asked him that, what are the effects if they should fail? And he said they could give me $100 million. And I said, no way, I don't need that. This is my life. I'll live with the pain. And two of the doctors were so furious, old men. They were so furious that I refused surgery. They were going to split open my back, check the spine, and then open the head as well.
So during this period, were you able to work? Or, in the course of this 1.5 years or so,
no,
you were not able to work?
I wasn't working.
So you refused the surgery?
Yes.
How did you think you were going to get better if you turned out, if you refused to have surgery?
I have a lot of friends who are medical doctors in America. So usually I will talk to them and ask them questions, And I also read about the spine, the brain. That's my area, I love reading books around that. And I realized, no, these guys can make mistakes and mess up my life. Now I can.
So you were nervous about it, and your instinct told you shouldn't do this.
Exactly.
Okay.
One, I'm a software engineer, okay, and in that field, we sit, we program, we do a lot. But that time, I could not sit for 30 minutes. I could not sleep for 30 minutes. I could not stand for 30 minutes. So I said, no, I'm going to.
But shouldn't that be a good reason enough for you to accept what the doctors were offering as the treatment for what was happening to you? So you could get back, hopefully, to a normal life.
No, you know what? Two of the doctors, told me that, listen, Grimmond, it's 50-50.
Okay.
It's either you go totally paralyzed, or we don't know what's going to happen to you again. But you might be totally paralyzed.
So you could get totally paralyzed, or you could get well. Obviously, that's what 50-50 means.
Yes, they said 50-50. So, right. And I said, no way. I wasn't going to take surgery.
So then then what happened? Then you did what?
Then after, some time, I realized, they were not, giving me, what I needed. because I was off duty at work. So I called my lawyer, that this is what has happened to me. These guys have refused to give me treatment and all that.
Tell me when you decided to paint. Tell me about when you decided to paint. What happened?
I was watching my TV. Around that, I could just get angry, without any cause. I turned on my TV, and that thing, jumped into me again. I was angry. I switched it off. I went to my bedroom, sat on the bed, then I took 2 of the painkillers that they gave me. I slept. Around that time, I felt somebody was patting me, that I should get up. So I woke up. I said, who is patting me? I'm single. What's going on here? And I could hear a voice telling me that, turn on your computer. So I turned the computer on and said, start drawing. I said, what am I going to draw? I'm not a painter. So I started moving the cursor, the mouse. And I started creating something. Then designs started coming out,
And you'd never tried your hand at this before?
No. So after about 3 weeks, I realized, the numbness, we're kind of leaving the left side, but the headache was still there. Yeah.
So what did you draw? What did you?
No, I drew. Let me show you. For instance, this one. This is the first one that I drew. Life is precious. Every drop counts. So I printed it.
Beautiful.
I printed it, and then anytime I got confused, I would just...
Very nice, doctor, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So
I'll just be going through the paintings, and before I could say Jack, everything had left the system. I wasn't having back pain again. Well, I was wearing the brace, but after I had decided to go without, surgery, I removed the brace. I had 2 of them on my left arm, 2 down here, and 2
on your left leg as well as your left arm.
Yes, and 2 of them, 1 down
your
here
lower,
and in the upper chamber. Yeah. So I decided to remove them.
But how do you know that what you were wearing, the braces that you were wearing, weren't the reason why you felt better?
No. I got healed after the painting. I removed the brace, still having the pain. Okay, and I stuck to painting. And anytime I watched my painting, I felt good.
You felt better?
Yes. So I decided, So one day I just woke up from bed, took all the medication, went to my restaurant, dumped everything in, then flies it out. But I didn't tell my doctors,
And that was it with the medication?
That's it. That was it.
And it's been about 14, 15 years?
16 years.
16 years.
Yeah.
And none of those blinding pains, those backaches,
No.
numbness, tingling?
No.
And you continue to paint?
Yes, I love painting. When I started painting, I could paint 350 averagely every day. And I realized it was disturbing my sleep pattern. So I stopped.
What, you stayed awake and painted?
I could wake up, around 2 a.m., paint till 10 p.m. Sometimes I wouldn't even eat. I forgot about food. But I would be drinking Lucozade and then water.
Doctor, what do you make of his story?
yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to viewers and listeners. Well, that is an interesting thing. Before then, let me just explain, and a little disclaimer. We don't have the details of the medical records from the medical perspective. We are getting glimpses of how he understood it. So my comments will take into consideration that, plus some speculation of what the doctors may have found.
What?
So he had the accident, and he went blank. Now, the brain is like a fruit in a box of bones, the skull. And there's a little, that's the brain.
The brain is like a what?
The brain, okay,
Yes.
this is the head you see.
Yes.
And we have the brain,
Yes,
which
inside it.
is inside the skull, the bones. Now, there's a little space between the brain and the skull, very little space. Now, if you encounter a situation where, let's say, an impact, a very strong impact, if you imagine your vehicle hitting you from behind, you are thrown back and then you hit back. So it shakes the brain. It shakes the brain, which is in the head. And so the brain itself hits the skull. And that hitting creates a certain impact. Very, very strong impact might lead to what we call concussion. The concussion might lead to you going blank, you going unconscious, that's coma, for a few seconds to up to 24 hours. It does happen. If there is more extensive damage, then it will lead to a damage to the architecture of the brain itself. And that is more serious. We call that contusion. Now, with a concussion, you may improve without any after effects, or you may improve with some residual effects, depending. Some of the residual effects could be, in fact, memory loss. And I've seen cases of concussion who have lost memory up to about 2 years after the accident. It may also be headache, very serious headache, numbness or tingling, very uncomfortable situation. In fact, you might even you might be a little paralyzed depending on the impact. So in this case, that is what most likely happened, concussion. And after the effect, after the concussion, we call that post-concussional syndrome. A syndrome, complications arising from the concussion, that's after the concussion, so post-concussional syndrome. Now, the doctors may have suspected...
And the post-concussional syndrome would manifest in the ways that he's described.
Numbness, tingling, headache, and well, he didn't describe any forgetfulness. Some may be confused. So all those are features of the post-concussional syndrome. Now, he says the doctors wanted to take him through surgery. They may have suspected that it went beyond concussion to contusion, where there was a certain damage to the architecture of the brain. And it could, in fact, even be blood clots in the brain, for which they thought that he might need to be operated for the clot to be removed. I'm sure he went through MRI, CT scan, and over there they can do SPECT, various such tests, neuro images of the brain to know what must have been happening. So the issue here is that with the concussion, the post-concussional syndrome, and he not finding any solutions at that time, then he went through later art therapy, which is the subject matter.
Right.
Now, art therapy is known to be effective. That is a situation where you use art itself. In fact, there's also music therapy, art or music, to bring about therapy or treatment in the person's mental state. And I must say, post-concussional syndrome is at the same time a nervous shock, nervous problem, and also a psychiatric disorder. So we may say neuropsychiatric, neurological psychiatric. You may respond to some psychiatric medications, some neurological medications, some talking therapy, psychological approaches. Now, one such psychological approach is the psychotherapy. And so art therapy is part of psychotherapy. Music therapy is part of psychotherapy. Music therapy, you know, it's really long. You remember, okay, we know from the Bible, when Saul was disturbed and David would go and play the harp and Saul would get well. That was music therapy. But it's in recent times that we've actually found the scientific basis with evidence-based and found that as a discipline of therapy in mental health conditions. So art therapy is one side situation. So you are using artwork to bring about therapy to a person who has a mental problem. And I must say, it's not always mental. Sometimes you can have some other health conditions. Now, what really happens is that the process of the drawing itself is therapeutic. The process. Because really, the brain is interesting. If the brain functions, we have what we call the mind. So as I'm moving my hand, the brain is functioning and leading to a function of the brain we call the mind. So the functional aspect of the brain is the mind. Now in the mind, which is when the brain functions, that is where a whole lot of things in our wakeful life and whatnot, that is where they happen.
So can we say the brain is the hardware and the mind is the software?
Precisely. Precisely. You just got it right. So in this case, when the hardware is disordered, it can affect the software. But sometimes the hardware may be intact and you still have a problem with the software.
Right.
And sometimes the hardware may be disordered and yet may not affect the software. So in the same way with the brain.
You're watching The Lounge. We're taking a break. See you shortly. Welcome back. This is The Lounge. My guests, Ekow Grimmond-Thomson and Dr. Akwesi. We're exploring the whole subject of art and music therapy. We're hearing the story of Ekow's recovery following a road accident, how he recovered through painting. Dr. Say, you were walking us through
therapy.
Yes, how art and music therapy works.
Yeah, so I was explaining the mechanism of efficacy of art therapy. So the process of drawing itself has an impact on the brain. You know, whatever we manipulate has an impact on the brain, the way the brain functions, and the way it functions is what manifests as the mind. So a disorder of the mind can then be corrected through the manipulation from outside world on the brain. Indeed, we even know that how we talk to you, what you hear, what you feel, what you say impacts on the brain, and there are ways of measuring the impact. In fact, you are watching a film, we can measure the extent to which the film watching impacts on the brain. The biochemical processes that go on, the oxygen consumption, the energy consumption can all be measured these days. So it has an impact on the brain, and that also has an impact on the way the brain functions, that's the mind. And that is one mechanism by which art therapy impacts on the mind. Another mechanism is that the person who draws, the fact that he's been able to draw something very beautiful also becomes what we call biofeedback, a feedback mechanism for him to see that, oh, after all, I can do something. And that kind of satisfaction he gets also has a positive impact on the mind.
So what happened to Ekow is not a fluke?
No, it's not a fluke. And plus the third thing I wanted to explain also is that the therapist who is administering the art therapy on the person, what the person draws, we can also look at that, understand, interpret, and know what is going on in the mind. Because whatever you produce, you have given part of you into that work. So by interpreting, knowing what is going on, we can see what is going on in the mind. Your stresses, your confusions, your ambitions, your aspirations, and whatever is happening can be interpreted from, in fact, even your artwork. So those are the three mechanisms by which art therapy actually works. So I want to say that it's something we know scientifically as part of treatment for mental health conditions.
Right.
Unfortunately, in Ghana, we've not been using that a lot. It's part of our treatment mechanism, but we've not laid a lot of emphasis, largely because you don't have the specialists in that area. And that requires specialization. If you go to the 3 psychiatric hospitals, we have occupational therapy departments, and art therapy is a component of the occupational therapy. But invariably, we don't have people who have specialized in art therapy because, as I said, it's a specialization and you need to be trained, especially in that. And we don't have them, and that's why we've not laid a lot of emphasis. But it's part of our treatment, and we know that.
And can it lead to physical well-being? For example, you know, he was wearing those braces, which presumably was to keep his back together and so on. Can it lead to physical repair?
It can. You know, the brain is actually the center of the body, not anatomically. Anatomically, we talk about the heart being the center, but actually, functionally, the brain is executive. It controls everything. And so what the brain does has a lot of impact. It can affect your physical. I'm throwing my hand, and one may think it's from the strength of my hands, but it's actually from my brain. And so it has an impact on the brain.
Is that why, depending on where you are injured in the brain, you may or may not move
a certain portion,
certain part of your body?
Precisely. The brain, as it is, even though it's an entity, in fact, it's divided into two halves, plus numerous other components. Each part controls a specific portion of the body. So if I lose a certain portion, that controls my thumb. I may not be able to move the thumb. If I lose a certain half of my brain, the other half is centered, and half of my body, that's where I get paralyzed. So it has an impact. And that's what really. But I must also add that often it works more in some cases than others. That is also true. For instance, it works more with traumatic situations, either physical trauma or psychological trauma, like post-traumatic events. You've gone through some stresses. Let's say you encounter a fatal situation, but you don't die, somebody else dies. Like a road traffic accident, you see other people dying, and anytime you realize, I could have died. So you relive it, you remember, and you go through that picture, and you are uncomfortable, a whole lot of conditions. We call that post-traumatic stress disorder. Art, music therapy does a lot of good in those areas. Other emotional disorders, anxiety disorders, art therapy does a lot of good. Schizophrenia, which is a more major, more serious condition in the brain, it may not do that much good.
And what is that? What's schizophrenia?
Schizophrenia is what I call the most debilitating kind of mental illness, in which your mind is basically disorganized, muddled, and your thinking process is muddled. And there are different types, but one type of it is a type that we see people outside, maybe unkempt, vagrant on the streets. But there are other schizophrenics
talking to themselves, or to
imaginary things.
Right.
You don't understand what is happening. Schizophrenia. But I don't want us to think that is only because somebody could be well-dressed, neat, but when he starts talking, then you recognize the issues of schizophrenia. But that is schizophrenia. So basically, your thoughts are disorganized, and it affects your whole life, gets disorganized. So that's a major mental disorder. It does not work as much in schizophrenia as in other emotional conditions. But even there, as an adjunct, add it to other forms of therapy, it does help.
Right. Ekow, so you showed me that beautiful painting. Is there something else that, can you show me something else? Yeah. And what do you paint about?
I just don't paint. I paint the effects
of
anything. You know, I just don't paint what I've seen before. I just paint what comes into mind. That's it.
And your work is abstract.
What doctor said is very true, because I had three cars. Mitsubishi Eclipse, Buick LeSabre, and then Ford Aerostar. I could go out, and then it's like, did I bring any car? Which of them? Where's my car? Then I would just...
This is after the surgery. Sorry, this is after the accident.
Yes.
Right.
Then I would just, I'm just saying something to, confirm what doctor said. Then I would just...
You had memory lapses.
Yeah. Then I would just, come back to my senses and press the alarm. Then the alarm would just direct me. Your car is over there. Then I would just move straight to that place and jump in and rush home.
Do you feel that you have these lapses nowadays?
No.
None of that?
Ever since I started painting, I've never had any problem. No. Let's see.
Show me something else.
Yes, I'll show you. Look at this one. I combined paintings with beads.
Okay, and you're calling this "You Are the Light of the World"?
Yes.
Do you imagine? I mean, when you start to paint, do you already have a picture in your mind, or do you have a picture in your mind already, which you then just transform onto the canvas, or does it evolve as you work?
I just don't think of any design. I just switch on my computer, and then I start drawing. That's it. And when I look at them, I get surprised. I didn't learn how to draw, but why am I able to do all this?
And that's a feedback mechanism, as I was saying.
Right.
That it helps him to improve.
Right. And you feel a sense of satisfaction and...
Sure. I feel good.
So, doctor, when the brain is repaired, does it work differently?
It depends on the damage that was caused to the brain and the damage that it caused on the mind. So the brain it has what we call plasticity. Plasticity means that a certain damage of the brain and the loss of the function, the other portions of the brain can work to overcome it. So if the damage of that part of the brain is not very extensive, then by virtue of its plasticity, the other portions can work to overcome it, and you will not see any residual effects. In other words, you will come back to your normal self.
Right.
But if the damage was quite extensive, then the plasticity may not be able to cover it, so you will still see some damage on the mind, and that is where you may not come back to function as you were functioning earlier.
Right. At what stage do we say somebody is mentally retarded? This is Ofori Bediako's question from Cape Coast.
Technically, when you say mental retarded, it's different from saying he has a mental illness. By mental retardation, we mean to say that the brain did not have enough chance to grow. Everybody, when you are born, from age 0 up to about 5 years, the brain is developing very fast. Then it slows down a little bit to about 15 to 16. Then it slows down further to about 25, 28. It attains its maximum maturity at about 28. Thereafter,
at about what age?
At about 25, 28. And so that's where you are sharpest. Everybody, you are sharpest between 25 and 28.
Oh, really?
That's right.
So I should give up?
No, you don't give up. You plateau up to some point, and then you come down slightly. And so a lot of discoveries you realize are done by people within 25, 28. The Nobel Prize winners, a lot of them, 25, 28. At the time they did it. Oh. But it may not be given to them at that age. It may be given to them later when you realize the impact of what they found at that age. So
okay, so say that again. Mm-hmm. So if you're between what? You're between
25 and 28. That is where your brain achieves its maximum maturity.
All right. Okay. So guys and girls, this is your chance. If you've got something to do, you're between 25 and 28. Listen carefully.
Achieves its maturity. So with the development of the brain, as I said, up to 5 years, it develops very fast and it slows down. Now, up to 5 years is very significant. If the brain does not have enough chance to develop, anything happens and it's arrested. That's what you call mental retardation.
Right.
So the brain is retarded. It did not have the chance to develop like everybody else. And again, even there, we have different levels of retardation: mild, moderate, severe, profound. The profound ones are those who, in the past, they described as imbecile, which is a wrong terminology now. But those are those drooling saliva when they are eating. They really cannot, they mess themselves up, might even not be able to walk properly. And he may be 16, and yet the behavior is like a child who is 3, 4 years.
I've been to the children's ward
Precisely.
in Accra, the psychiatric hospital.
So by retardation, that's what we mean, which is different from somebody who has developed well, and something happens to the mind, and so his behavior changes. That is not retardation.
Okay. And so another question. No. Okay, so there are none here. You're listening to The Lounge. You just heard Dr. Akwesio say, psychiatrist. I'm also here with Ekow Grimmond-Thomson, who is an artist who's recovered from a severe injury during a road accident he had about 16 years ago. He's certain that his recovery is due to the time he spends and the work he does as an artist. Do you have any more work you want to show me?
Oh, sure. You see, you can see that they are all focusing at one point. All I'm trying to say...
So this is in black and white?
Yes.
And what is this called?
I don't have a name for this one.
Okay.
But this one, I'm trying to say that you just keep focused. Okay, keep your focus. Okay. Irrespective of whatever happens, right? Just keep your focus.
There seems to be quite a bit of distraction. These two breasts, it's like two breasts to the left.
I call them brain cell.
Brain cell.
Brain cells. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And these are, the dendrites.
Okay.
These ones. I call them the dendrites.
The dendrites are the appendages that come out of the brain cell. So
okay. Yeah. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
This is the brain cell. These are the dendrites. That's right. Yeah.
What are you working on currently? What are you painting?
Painting anything.
Okay.
Anything. I could just anything. I can just break this glass into pieces and arrange them in a nice way.
Rearrange them?
Yes, rearrange them in a nice way and then frame it. Right. And hang it somewhere.
You clearly enjoy what you clearly enjoy it.
Yeah. In the field of software engineering, the pay is good. The pay is good, but I
get more satisfaction.
Exactly, I enjoy it. I don't get tired painting. Yeah.
Dr. Say, in your work, do you encounter many artists who maybe were artists previously, or who have been encouraged either by you or by your team to explore art as an occupation and as part of the recovery process?
Yes. In fact, if you go to Accra Psychiatric Hospital, for instance, right now, there is one person there who is more or less now like part of us. He was an artist before his illness. And in his illness and recovery, he has been encouraged to paint. He is multi-talented. Painter, sculptor, pencil drawing, all those things. And he's been doing it. And we have been exhibiting his artworks at the museum.
I think I know who you're talking about.
That's right.
I don't know his name. He's light-skinned.
Light-skinned, yes.
What's his name again?
Well, I'm sure he doesn't mind. He wouldn't mind. Abdallah.
Yes.
He's called Abdallah. Right. Because, and that's wonderful. Yeah. And we've also been using him to train now he's like our assistant therapist.
Right.
So to train other people who may have those talents. And I must say that art therapy, you don't need to have been an artist earlier.
Right.
In the case of Ekow, from the discussion, he had the trait in him, which he didn't utilize.
Right, when he was much younger.
When he was much younger. He didn't utilize, so it was like it went latent and later came up. But there are others who just didn't have any idea about artwork, and then they are able to do that and develop something, and they become interested. The point is that somebody said that we all are a bundle of talents, which we may not know we have. Mm-hmm. So at the appropriate time, when you encounter a situation, then that talent comes up, and you say, "Oh, I didn't know I had those talents." So that may be some of the people who are able to use it.
We've heard stories about people claiming they were ill, suffered some injury, and they woke up and then they were speaking a different language. Have you heard these stories? And
yes,
I've heard
some. I've had similar situations. You see, if you go to the brain and the mind, before I move into that, from the known, you move to the unknown. If I give you something that is more vivid, I have seen cases where somebody speaks about not different languages, but at least I encountered a young lady who, he says that at different times he has 4 different voices coming through her. So at some point, one voice comes and she knows it's a different person. Or of course, she doesn't know what's happening. But others watching him will know this is a different personality. At another time, another personality takes over, and differently, 4 different personalities. And when she came to my consulting, she had gone around variously. Of course, in our environment, they will say it's like witchcraft. But eventually, when she went around prayer camps and healers and whatnot, she was not getting the treatment. Somebody said, why don't you try the psychiatric hospital? She came. In my presence, while speaking, another voice would come through her. Earlier, she was speaking pure Fante. She couldn't speak Chi. Then when the new voice comes, pure Chi. And that voice will tell you, I'm this person, I'm that person. So it does happen.
And how do you explain that?
Well, it's a phenomenon we call dissociative identity disorder. Another name is multiple personality disorder. So what really happens is that the brain gets fragmented, the mind gets fragmented as a result of the illness. So the mind is fragmented, broken into various components, and rejoins. The components rejoin, and they rejoin in a way that it looks different from the original component. Under such circumstance, they can speak different languages, as it happened in my case. But at least this one, Chi and Fante, they are close. But they can speak different, like English, French, whatever. Because
could it be a language that individual has never really learned?
You may not have learned it, but invariably it's a language you have been exposed to at some point in time in your life.
Okay.
You see, the mind, every exposure, every encounter, we really don't forget fully. It goes into the recess, we call it unconscious mind. And at the appropriate time, it can then come up, rejoin, and manifest, and you think it's a different thing altogether.
It goes to rest on the C drive.
Right. So similar thing could happen to somebody who, so to speak, dies and comes back, a phenomenon they call near-death experience. He really didn't die, but like he nearly died. And when he comes back, comes with a different experience because of the mind rejoining and displaying different activities.
I've got a question here from Nanaya in East Legon. Says, can the problem, this is a cause problem, reoccur if he stops painting? I.e., the tingling, the numbness, and so on that he was feeling, the pain, the headaches, which are gone. But can it recur or reoccur if?
Yes and no. Depending, he started for about 14 years, is that right? So 14 years, it's like, okay, 14 years is long enough to have stabilized him. If he stops, it's not likely to recur. But until you are fully stabilized, it can recur. It's like you learn a language until you become very proficient in the language. If you stop it for some time, you will forget it. Mm-hmm. But if you become very proficient, no matter how long you stop it, you can always get it back. So similar thing. In his case, having had it for so long, it doesn't look like if he stops it. But nothing will actually get him to stop it because now he loves it even more than his own job. So he does it not for treatment now, but for pleasure.
Right. I must ask you about you know, the camps, the spiritual camps that spiritualists have created, and you know, family members take members of the family that are unwell. People take members of the family that are unwell to these camps, and sometimes they are in chains and they are starved and they are whipped, and all of this in an attempt, presumably, to exorcise
the evil spirits.
Evil spirit out of them. What is it? What's your comment about these?
In the past, we couldn't do much because we ourselves didn't have alternatives. Those days, if you stopped them, don't put them in chains. Of course, you know it's bad. But if you say don't put them in chains, you want to clamp down on them, where do they go? We didn't have the facilities spread nationwide. But now we are beginning to put in place the structures. Not only the psychiatric hospitals, but every health facility. We are training the health personnel there so that they can administer some form of mental health first aid. With that, it no longer becomes necessary to keep patients in chains. So now we started clamping down on the chaining. We moved into a prayer camp in the central region and released all the patients in chain. There were 17. And we are going from prayer camp to prayer camp. By the end of the year, nobody should be in chains. And in fact, we are criminalizing chaining patients.
So that's the kind of work that the Mental Health Authority is doing.
That's right.
But when you release these people, where do they go? Can they go home? Will they be accepted at home?
Those we released, we didn't release them and let them free. We took them to the Accra Psychiatric Hospital. That was Central Region. So now with the education, and we are educating the healers, some of them really don't need to be in chains. Even if initially there was some reason, later the reason no longer exists because they are calm, they are not dangerous. But they will tell you that they've not heard the instructions from God, and that continues the abuse. The education they are giving them, we are getting them to understand that if the person comes and without putting him in chains, you can pray for him to be well, fine, that's your case, go ahead. If you realize you have to put him in chains for you to subdue him, it's not your case, refer him.
Right.
If you put anybody in chains like that, you have offended the law, and you will be sanctioned, taken to court, prosecuted. You could be in prison for up to about 5 years, or fined for up to about 60 million or 6,000 Ghana cedis, or 60,000 Ghana cedis. Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's right. And you started the education and the process, and I'm sure by the end of the year, you won't see anybody in chains again. Okay. But I must also say that they are not totally harm the healers.
Right.
I have some burning sensation in my head. I can't sleep. I think the witches in my village are worrying me. I come and the prayer healer prays for me, assures me that I'm well or I'll be well, and the next day I'm well. No big deal. So those ones they can handle. And a lot of such situations, we call them minor mental disorders, that they can handle. So you train the healers and use them as frontline, informal, community mental health workers. So minor conditions they can see and give advice. The major ones, they will recognize and refer to us.
This is a difficult one to ask you as a psychiatrist because I don't know about your spirituality and so on, but what does prayer mean in these circumstances?
Prayer has a rule, and God has a rule. I believe in God. I'm religious. The only thing is that there are some things that God himself wants us to do for ourselves that we want God to do for us. God won't do those things for us. Yes. In other words, if somebody is ill, the first port of call is take him to the hospital and then add your prayers. And not the other way around. That let's take him to the prayer camp and pray. In fact, invariably, they will not send him to the hospital. And if he's in chains, may develop sores and gets complications. And when the complications set in and probably we're about to die, then the healer will say, we have finished the physical part. No, you finished the spiritual part. Go to the hospital for the physical part. At a point when it may be too late. You see breast cancers at prayer camps. That is not their business. But if you take the person to the hospital and at the same time you are praying for him, that's fine. Or he's out of the hospital and he says, I'm coming back to Pastor. I believe you need to pray for me so that I don't go back to your labs. No problem. So prayer has a role.
Right. You're watching The Lounge. We're taking a break. See you shortly. Welcome back. This is The Lounge. My guests, Ekow Grimmond-Thomson and Dr. Akwesi. We're exploring the whole subject of art and music therapy. We're hearing the story of Ekow's recovery following a road accident, how he recovered through painting. So, Ekow, you felt a tap on your leg and a voice telling you to get up and go paint.
No, the voice said, get up. Not the voice. I felt the tap. Mm-hmm. So I woke up. Then the voice came, switch on your computer. I turned on the computer and said, start drawing. I said, draw what? But I obeyed and started drawing. Yeah. And there are some big guys in this country whose name I wouldn't want to mention. they call me for assistance. They tell me, Ekow, I'm stressed out. I'm like, have you spoken to your doctor? Then they go, no, because some doctors are like 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven in America. It's a shop. Yeah, they don't close. They work 24/7. So they wouldn't want to go there. I said, listen, go to your doctor. Let him, diagnose of whatever is going on. Because I'm not a medical doctor. If anything should happen to you, hey, I'm out of it. But I would, give them the paintings. And I'll ask them to keep watching them. If you cannot sleep, just tune into the video version of my paintings and you will sleep.
So you do audio visuals as well?
Yes, I do
so
that.
So it's not just stills?
No.
Okay.
And I use a lot of Wolfgang's classical music, Mozart.
Mozart?
Yeah, and Tchaikovsky, and those guys.
Whilst working?
No.
Oh, you use that with your audiovisual artwork?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes when I feel, bored, I look at my paintings and then listen to Mozart. I like Mozart. Yeah. And I feel good when I listen to him. Together with Tchaikovsky and Kenny G.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Kenny G, the wind instrumentalist. Are you planning an exhibition? Have you had one or do you plan one?
I don't have the resources right now. What I have in my studio is I've invested about $500,000 into my painting. They're all in my studio right now.
But isn't that a good reason to have an exhibition so that more people other than just yourself will see your work, and maybe you can get your 500,000, you can liquidate it. You can liquidate the paintings into cash and replace the Ford, what's that car again?
The Ford Aerostar.
Yeah, your Ford Aerostar.
There's no space.
Get a Bentley, if that will make you happy.
I don't have the money right now to have an exhibition. If, I could get sponsors, fine. I'm ready.
All you need is space.
Space and sponsorship. Yeah.
So you're off medication, you're not taking any...
I dumped them at the restroom.
And that was
it. That's it. Okay. Said no, I'm not gonna live on medication because I know the effects that they're gonna have on my kidney, liver. No, I wouldn't want to cause any damage to my system. Right. Yeah, and doctor said something about defragmentation or something.
Fragmentation of the mind.
Okay. Now in computer science we have what we call defragmentation. Okay, you rearrange files. So sometimes when I get bored, I'll just turn on the system and then try to defragment my brain's register. I'm not a medical doctor, but based upon what I've read, from medical books, that's what I do, and I feel good. And
What do you read? What do you enjoy reading?
First of all, when I wake up in the morning, I read the Bible, and I try to focus on God for the fact that He made me, and He knows everything about me. So I just praise Him, give Him thanks, and then
surrender yourself.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Just keep drawing and painting. I have over 40,000 paintings. You will not believe it. Yeah.
Okay. Would love to see some. We'll show some on television, and we'll do the best that we can with you to hopefully have an exhibition one of these days. Okay. Thanks for your time, Ekow. And yes, Doctor.
I just want to sound a word of caution to listeners so that somebody does not think that if I have a mental health problem, I'll just sit in my room and paint and that'll be okay. It is best used as an adjunct. So go to the hospital and add that therapy. Right. So not something that to be exclusively used, especially if you are prescribing for yourself and it's not being prescribed by
a doctor.
That's right.
All right. So that's really important.
That's right.
Keep that in mind. Thank you, Dr. Kwesi. Thanks, Ekow. Thank you for watching. My name is Korle Bu Hospital. Have a good night. See you next week. Bye.